You know, if Nolan ever wanted to revisit these characters, he should probably call the sequel Leading. Following stars Jeremy Theobald as an unnamed young man who observes and follows strangers in the street so that he can find inspiration for his first novel. One day a man named Cobb, played by Alex Haw, catches on to this and confronts the man. Cobb is a thief who regularly breaks into people's homes and takes the man under his wing, which gets him involved in matters much more complicated than he ever expected. Welcome to a new series on my channel called the Director Series. Why is it called that? Because I'm going to go through a director's entire filmography and review each film one by one. Clever, I know. But I'll be touching more on things such as honing in on their style, how it evolved over each film, go into some backstory where I can, and these will culminate with a separate video at the end where I talk about which ones were the worst and which ones were the best. Because we all love lists, right? And I'm starting with one of the masters of modern mainstream movies himself, probably saying that one 3 times fast, Christopher Nolan. I almost wasn't going to start with Nolan because I wanted this to specifically coincide with the release of Tenet, and I wanted to include that as well. With the pandemic, it's been pushed back a few times already. It's now slated for August 12th. I don't know if that release date will end up happening, so this series may end up including Tenet, or it may not. It's 2020. Everything's unpredictable, so who knows? Anyway, let's talk about Following. It's actually kind of funny reading how the production of this movie went, considering who Christopher Nolan is now. You know, now he says he's making a movie and he's just throwing $100 million, sometimes even more, to just make whatever he wants. You know, it's like, yeah, sure, take what you need. You know, you want 100 million, 200 million, just take, you know, whatever. This movie's budget, though, was $6,000. Yeah. He shot this in black and white on 16mm film stock, and legend goes he can only afford so much of it, so he rehearsed everything extensively ahead of time so that he got everything down within 1 or 2 takes. And he was not only the writer, director, and producer, but he was also the cinematographer, and he helped with editing. And on top of that, most of the actors were his friends, with them and the crew all having full-time jobs during the week. So he had to work around schedules, and this took an entire year to make. Wild, right? So I'm going to try to be fair here because I know there's only so much you can do with what's provided, and Nolan himself even said that that low of a budget was extreme. But to be perfectly honest, it does show here. Like, you can't deny that. Specifically with the lighting. He couldn't afford professional lighting equipment for this, so this is a rare movie where nearly all the shots are used with natural and available lighting. Lamps in the room, bulbs in the ceiling, specifically only filming during the daytime. So yeah, there are a lot of shots here where characters' faces are half in the dark, or you can barely see what's going on, and it's not totally the result of creative choices, but in a way it works because this does take on a film noir style, which is what he was going for, and uses that sort of aesthetic. I've always had an appreciation for that genre. I always love the air of mystery that comes with it and the constant suspense that carries over from scene to scene. In fact, this movie especially evokes a Hitchcock style, in particular Strangers on a Train. There are similarities to both premises. Strangers on a Train follows a sympathetic tennis player who meets on a train, a literal psychopath who tries to get him to carry out a deal where they murder for the other person someone who they no longer want in their lives. And here you have Cobb, a thief who grooms the young man, who starts off the film as a totally innocent guy, into becoming a professional burglar, and guides him down a path to do more and more illicit activities, under the guise of trying to get to know more about people to find inspiration for his novel, just like he was doing at the beginning of the film. I'm not going to spoil either movie, so I'm just going to leave it at that, but while the premises aren't exactly the same, I definitely got a Strangers on a Train vibe from this movie. And Nolan, despite this being his first film, he quickly proves that he knows how to capture suspense and build tension well. He goes for extreme close-ups and he utilizes them more and more as the film progresses. It gives this feel that this man is now so involved in Cobb's work that he's at a point of no return, and now he's trapped. Everything's just the domino effect. Every conversation he has just leads him to dealing with someone else, and then on top of that another person, and then another person. Especially as he gets involved with this one woman he meets, played by Lucy Russell, called the Blonde. Another film noir trope right there. She's involved with some shady people herself, and she tries getting the man to help her out, but she also gives off this air of mystery, and you're not sure if she's hiding anything herself, so there's a lot of tension built up from those conversations. For those of us who are spoiled with Nolan's later films where he has Hans Zimmer scoring each of them, we don't get that here. The man scoring this film, as well as most of Nolan's earlier films, is a man named David Julian, and he actually does a pretty solid job here. The score is probably one of my favorite aspects of the film, and that's despite the fact that we do have some long stretches where there are no music. But when we do, we either get a quiet, low-key hum playing, or we'll get other scenes where it's this sort of like I'm not definitely recreating that right, but yeah, we get that. But anytime you did hear it, you knew those were moments where Nolan was building up to something bigger. I like that a lot, actually. I want to go back for a second, though, and talk about those long stretches without music. That plays a part into something bigger that I had an issue with. While, like I said, this is mostly suspenseful and Nolan does build up the tension, there were a few times where you don't feel that emotional peak. There are scenes of characters just engaged in a conversation and there'll be these flat shots with no music. And the actors all kind of talk in this cool, calm, and collected voice, which goes hand in hand with the film noir style. But you don't feel the full emotional weight of those interactions at times. They'll feel static and like they're just another conversation. Like, I understand he had limitations. I'm sure he couldn't provide every single scene with the stylistic flair he maybe wanted to due to the budget issues. But it's still worth pointing out. And it's not like this goes on for every single scene in the movie, and I didn't feel this way for most of it. Like I said, I found the majority of the movie to be suspenseful. And it's also not a knock on the actors either, since I mentioned how they were talking. In fact, all the performances were fine. They weren't flat. I found them all to be believable, and I think it's impressive when you're able to get good performances out of first-time or non-professional actors. This was the first major role for Jeremy Theobald, Alex Haw, and Lucy Russell, and they all did well. Alex Haw, side note, this is actually his only film to date, and it probably always will be. I looked him up, and after this, he went on to become an architect. And I mean, it's too bad. Well, I mean, not too bad. He's successful in his own right. But, I mean, he was pretty good here. I mean, it's just too bad that we didn't get to see him in more roles. Nolan also employs a non-linear form of storytelling, which is something we're gonna see a lot of in these first few films. So once the young man meets Cobb, we cut back and forth between two different time periods. One being Cobb showing him how to become a thief, and then to an unspecified period of time later when he's on his own. When we first meet him, he has longer hair and a beard, and when we see him later on, he's clean-shaven and his hair shorter. That change in appearance is the big distinguisher so that we know which time period we're in exactly. I thoroughly enjoyed the clean-shaven period of events, but after a while, I felt that everything that took place earlier on while he still had long hair just felt more like setup, and it was dragged out a little too much. And that's saying something considering it's a 70-minute movie. I wouldn't call it flat-out boring though, but it felt like since this is not that long of a story to begin with, that Nolan just extended it with more sequences that maybe we didn't need with the young man under Cobb. Like, there are scenes of characters just going on to one another, and their conversations are used as voiceover while we see B-roll of something else going on. I didn't always find those interesting. It's everything that goes on during the clean-shaven period of events where the real suspense is. One scene that especially stuck out to me as filler is where we're watching the young man shaving and cutting his hair, but it's placed towards the end of the movie like it's this big moment. Like, maybe this is just a nitpick, but we know he cut his hair already because we've been following him the entire movie like that. You don't need this extended sequence showing us that at the end of the movie like it means something. Like, it's all set up for something that we already know happened and doesn't require its own sequence. And again, maybe it's just a nitpick, but it just felt like it was killing time until we got to the actual suspenseful stuff. Okay, so I know I kind of railed on this movie a little bit, and I know some of the issues stemmed partially from budget limitations that were out of Nolan's control, like just not having proper lighting, but they were also partially due to problems with the narrative, such as some scenes feeling like filler, or some not feeling as suspenseful as they should have been. However, despite my grievances, the good still vastly outweighs the bad. The performances are fine, plus Nolan shot it well, and he was able to build up suspense and tension for the most part, and even if it wasn't always consistent, it's still an engaging story, with a good throwback feel to the film noir aesthetic. It's a mostly quick 70-minute movie, and it makes for a solid debut for Nolan. Following gets a 7.5 out of 10. I'll next be reviewing Memento. I'm very excited to talk about that one. I should have that out within the next few days. I may have reviews of one or two newer films in between. Stay tuned. I'm excited to discuss that and more of Nolan's films very soon. So let me know, did you see Following, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you find it suspenseful? Did you like the non-linear storytelling? And what's your favorite first film from a director? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll catch you next time.